Um, Welcome, and thank you, Professor Costa, for being available for us for a short interview. This new education deal initiative is a very important thing for Parents International. We have talked to several parents from several countries and also consulted teachers, school leaders, even policymakers, and we came up with a set of ideas, proposals, whatever you call it, for using the current situation and all the experiences we are having as leverage for renewing education. And we all know that we really, really need that. I know that this week you participated in the Global Forum organized by OECD, where several similar issues were raised. So I think we all know that we need to act, and we believe that this is a good time because we have a unique situation and we can act together. So I would like to ask you just a few short questions. First of all, because I think that you are a thinker that thinks very much along the lines that we do. We had the experience to meet earlier. I would like to ask you which of our proposals or ideas is or are the ones that you personally or professionally identify with most?
Yeah, well, thank you for this invitation to talk and reflect a bit together. This crisis, this school closure that we have been experiencing, no education system was prepared for this. We were all caught in a big surprise with the parents' roles changing and too much demand on the role of parents, teachers having to adapt to a way of teaching and a way of interaction that they were not prepared to, although they were very good in adaptation to this context. But there's one thing I always, it irritates me a bit, is when people say this is the new normal. And I've reacted to this saying, well, if this is the new normal, I want to be abnormal for the rest of my life, because there's aspects and those that you discuss in the document are really crucial. But it's very clear that if there is one big lesson that we are learning, is the lesson about the school as a space for social development and for emotional development. So your key aspect on the social role of school and on the well-being as not only a condition for learning but also a consequence of learning is really important. And why do I say this? Because what we all feel, teachers, students, parents, everyone, is that nothing replaces the presence in the space where you are learning, because school is not only about content. That's the part that you can read in books. School and education are about relationship, about being able to see whether the class is developing, whether one student is too shy, whether there's signals that you only manage to catch in presence. And I think this is one of the big lessons that we are learning. And also, I many times say that this COVID crisis is, and it's an image I used before for the areas of inclusion in education. But this crisis is putting our education systems under a microscope. And what we see things that we already knew, but they are amplified very, very much. So the need for differentiation, the need for innovation in education, the need for the presence, for the relationship is now far from obvious. And also, very importantly, school in most of our countries is not only a tool for social mobility, but it's a tool for social protection. there are many children who are sometimes at risk at home, and or that don't eat at home, and the only place that provides safety and even a filter to detect some changes in behaviors, attitudes, is school. So here in Portugal, we tried as much never leave these children abandoned, but there's big difficulties. So I think that for the future, we really have to put the focus on this social dimension of school.
I think it's really, really important. And when you only focus on the academic content that the schools provide, very often this dimension and the inclusiveness are the victims. Did you find anything in our proposal that you fully don't agree with, that you shouldn't really consider in your own context?
I mean, there's not really, not
That's
really.
Good.
Not really, but what I'm seeing here in Portugal and the responses we had to provide here in Portugal, and where people are more concerned and there's more debate, and also at this OECD meeting, the voice of the students was very important, because from many countries they also signal this. Sometimes it appears that people are more concerned with evaluation than with learning, right? And there's this very clear mix-up between evaluating and classifying, assigning a grade. And then there's a whole discussion that final exams should be abolished, but we have to be careful about these statements, because what this crisis also shows is that standardization may be a mistake, because it eliminates some inequity, but also the fact that even from the side of some parents, many times the only concern is that schools are open because of exams, and not because of what their children are missing. That shows that we really need to reflect very seriously about the role of evaluation in school. Because when I hear parents, for instance, saying, "Well, I only want my kid to go to school because of the exams," we see that even in the families, the value of standardized assessment is overrated, and this is something that I really think deserves a sound reflection. It's something you could organize when we all meet together again.
Yeah, well, from our perspective, well, I'm lucky. I'm a parent representative, but I'm an education professional. So it's for me, it's easy, and it's also easy to sit together with other parents. But you should not forget that for the overwhelming majority of parents, they only have one kind of school experience. So there is a very important role in our perspective, from our perspective, on the professionals to make the parents understand that their children would learn more if it wasn't final exams, if it was some kind of a gamified summative assessment, or if it was formative assessment. So yeah, I think that the key is that there has to be a very strong collaboration between professionals and parent leaders to make the parents understand that the school has a different role. Because when we went to school, knowledge was in the library that was partly accessible and in the heads of teachers. Now it's on the internet. We all know that. But of course, we are happy to collaborate on that with you. And this is one of our main concerns, that teachers need to talk to parents much more to make them understand.
That's one of the when I use this image of the microscope, it also became very clear that also other things became clear. How much education sometimes depends on the family, but also how much good communication and collaboration is required for students to to develop and to learn. And because all of a sudden parents were more present, more required. This by itself is also that should concern us very much, because those children whose parents are not at ease with some contents, with some tasks, are even more isolated and even more left behind. But also, at some point I felt the need to write a note on my Facebook for parents, because there's lots of stress for teachers right now. It's not only the adaptation, but it's the notion we have that what happened in a classroom, also going back to the social contract that exists in schools. We had reports of students in a class with their peers and their teachers, and all of a sudden the face of the father would appear on the screen to correct the teacher or to say, "My son wants to talk," and this is so bad. I mean, this is the impact this has on the relation between teachers and students, which has a way of being that is not does not involve that behind the desk of every student there is a parent monitoring or interacting with the teacher, and so what this calls for is for real collaboration that involves respect and knowing what the role is for each one of us, and even defining this role can be difficult, because it was already difficult in presence, and now it becomes more difficult at the distance because the paradigm is different.
Well, this is why we are calling for a new education deal, so that the parents, the families, and the schools should agree on their roles. And of course, the only sustainable way of doing it is that it has to be a professional initiative, because every parent has 1, 2, 3, 4 children, but every teacher has an impact on this relationship between school and family in the case of hundreds or even thousands of families. So we have to start from the professional side. Well, this is why we're offering so many teacher trainings too.
Mm-hmm.
Do you plan any policy change or any kind of centralized incentive in Portugal to make these changes happen that we've been talking about? I mean, not only for this period, but for the hopefully not new normal, but for the normal that we would be comfortable about. Well,
look, we had already started the path from 2016 on defining a profile, a student profile based on competencies that go way beyond just declarative knowledge, involving dimensions like interpersonal relationship, autonomy, problem solving, critical thinking, creative thinking, which are really skills that are needed for life, but also for a different view on education. On the side, we and I think that was the topic in Milan when we met there. We also approved a law in 2018 on inclusion that doesn't treat inclusion in education as a separate box, but really as something that has to do with the curriculum. We developed at the same time tutorials for students with greater difficulties, but these tutors, what they do with the students, they are not the private lesson teacher that is helping in some subjects, but the idea is to work with small groups that don't have a good relation with school, and to make sure that they can rebuild a relationship with education, with the way they move and feel in the school, and this is also this goes together with several measures on For instance, the art dimension of education, the artistic dimension of education, that's also one of the skills in the student profile. That we have a national plan for arts, and one big branch of this plan is to create cultural projects in the schools, so that the school has in its DNA an approach to the arts, again in the curriculum. That is to say, if I look at the curriculum for physics, mathematics, geography, where is the art in there? Because sometimes we memorize things, but we don't wonder and become amazed at the beauty of things in science, in literature, in mathematics, even the principles of balance, rhythm, and the beauty that comes from music has a lot to do with mathematic patterns. So there's so much to learn, and these areas of sports, arts are critical for their first times, the first experience of success for many students, for many disadvantaged students. So this was work that we started, that we are developing. It was affected by this crisis, but we are working on keeping it going. Schools were transforming ways of teaching at their pace, at their will, at their rhythm. But we approved legislation that gives the schools the autonomy and the flexibility in curriculum development to start working and exploring these dimensions further than it was already done.
And do you think that the current situation will accelerate this process? Because, well, that's the hope that I can detect from the previous.
I think this situation, the pandemic, will accelerate some parts. So obviously, digital skills for everyone, or new ways of assessing, because you cannot assess at a distance the same way you can. But what we have here is a very, very clear mix between an individual dimension of learning, the individual well-being, always based on collective well-being, and this happens in presence. This happens in presence. I mean, no machine replaces the relationship established between a teacher and the student. So, and that's why I really hope this is not the new normal, as some say.
Yeah. Well, you know that I admire what you are doing to renew your education system. So I can only wish you all the best, and to hope that the current experiences are actually helping you to implement this inclusive, equitable approach in education in Portugal. We'd like to thank you for the interview, and I hope that we can continue, as you kind of indicated earlier.
Thank you so much, and thank you for your initiative, for sharing these ideas, because we need to share at this time, always, but also very much at this time.
Thank you.